All right, great. And now for the second part of our briefing, we have as our guest today, Corinne Fleischer, the Regional Director for the Middle East, North Africa, and Eastern Europe at the World Food Programme. And she'll be talking primarily about her visit to Ukraine. Ms. Fleischer, welcome.
Thank you very much. Where do I have to press? Nowhere.
No, you're set.
Yes, and I will also speak about our operation in Gaza, and I've heard you have covered this extensively already. But let me just start. I mean, the people in the Middle East have not had a break since, over 12, 13 years, with the Arab Spring, protracted refugee crisis, near economic collapse of some of the countries, and then Ukraine, which had a profound impact and still has on food inflation in the Middle East, and now we have Gaza, and all these had a profound impact on people's ability to put food on the table. Today, in what WFP calls the Middle East, Northern Africa, and Eastern Europe region, the countries that we cover there, close to 50 million people are food insecure. This is double from before the Arab Spring, and now WFP has to feed 6 times more people than before the Arab Spring. And now, of course, on top of this, we're bracing for a regional war, and this has to stop because families really can't cope. So I'd like to start with Gaza because I spent a week in Gaza end of July, where I witnessed at that time the people fleeing and following the evacuation orders. Now the 2 million people crammed in what is 11% of already a very densely populated strip. And when you're there, I mean, it's just there is simply no empty space left in Gaza. The beach, when we're at the beach, it's full of makeshift camp, one after the other, up to the shore, wait for, the waves to come in the winter. The road is full of people. And then the UNRWA shelters, are crammed. The one I was in, you could hardly even walk through, 13,000 people in there. 60 to 70 people live in a classroom that usually holds 20 to 30 people. So despite all the challenges you also just talked about, every month WFP reaches over 1 million people in Gaza and also in the West Bank with food assistance, with bread and with nutrition interventions. But beyond that, we use every emergency dollar that we invest in this operation to also help restore, where possible, private sector supply chains. So we do that through the support to bakeries. Bakeries actually have started operating again in Gaza because of the support we provide them. Wheat flour, fuel, also yeast where needed. And we keep the retail shops open because we channel our in-kind assistance. Right now, we can't do really cash assistance. We channel our in-kind assistance to the shops that we were working with before. So they keep their people paid and keep the shops open. So then when the markets are back on, they are there. But humanitarian operations have become ever more difficult to carry out. When I was there, it took us 8 hours to reach from Deir el-Balach to the northern crossing, but normally takes 40 minutes. We face endless hours to receive a green light to move. Then we spend hours at waiting points, at holding points, at checkpoints. Roads are destroyed. People are on the road, as I said. We had two flat tires when we were on that trip. And now the winter is coming, and it's becoming even more difficult. Roads will become impassable. So in the last month since I left, we've seen more evacuation orders and the massive deterioration of the security environment for humanitarian staff. So WFP lost access to its 3rd warehouse and last operational warehouse in Gaza, in the middle area, under evacuation order. We lost 5 WFP-supported community kitchen that had to be evacuated, and we lost close to 20 distribution points across the strip. So while we do manage to bring in food, more or less, not enough, but we can't distribute it right now. So we're reaching less people. We reached less people last month than what we usually do. And also, the evacuation orders affected our own staff. They had to evacuate our main operational center with just a few hours' notice for the third time since the war began. So this increased incidents of violence that you were talking about before against humanitarian workers are choking our efforts to prevent famine in Gaza. When 500,000 people are in catastrophic and famine-like conditions. So what we are saying, we need more crossing points and we need streamlined operations so we don't spend the day in cars but can actually do our work. We need law and order restored in Gaza so that we can travel and have our trucks safely reach the people. And we also need cash to come back to Gaza so that people can start and buying again in the shops. Going to Ukraine, I was there 2 weeks ago, and the situation is also dramatic. I was in Sumy Oblast. I met with people there whose houses were destroyed, and you can feel their exhaustion after so many displacements. I met a man of 65 years old. I asked him for his story. He told me he just left with the pants he has on, carrying them, and carrying his wife who was sick and cannot walk anymore. He was crying. WFP left Ukraine in 2018, and we had to come back because of the war. But from the onset now, we reach about 2 million people, mainly at the front lines with cash and with food. But also, again, we invest every dollar to strengthen local capacities so that we can leave again when the time is right. But unfortunately, right now, this doesn't look like it. But what we're doing, so we've invested over $1.2 billion in the local economy. We buy most of our food we use inside Ukraine locally. We also exported 1 million tons of food from Ukraine, under the grain for Ukraine into countries in need. And we work very closely with the government to complement their social protection system, their safety net they give to their people, the pension system. So we top up pensions and we top up disability pensions to people rather than giving a full pension to them. And we bring food to the front lines where supply chains are destroyed, but then we help restore them where possible. We support bakeries, and also we do a demining project for small-scale farmers. So far, we've supported 5,000 farmers to go back to the fields with demining activities together with FAO. I stop here. I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks very much. I'll open up the floor for questions. Please identify yourselves to our speaker. Edie, you first.
Thank you very much on behalf of the United Nations Correspondents Association for doing this briefing. My name is Edith Lederer from the Associated Press. You said that in Gaza you're trying to reach about 1 million people every month. We know that almost everybody in Gaza, which is more than 2 million people, desperately need food. What's happening with the other half that you can't reach? And can I ask you almost the same question for Ukraine? Because you said you're getting 2 million giving 2 million people, mainly near the front lines, help. Is that everybody who really needs it? And what about people in the rest of the country? Thank you.
All right, so we are not the only ones providing food in Gaza. UNRWA is providing, and there are other NGOs who are providing food. But we have very clearly coordinated that we make sure that everybody is reached. If there is a need to reach more people, we will reach more people, or we will try to reach more people in Gaza, provided we have the ability to operate. In Ukraine, it is the same situation. There are others providing assistance. There is also much more cash given in Ukraine than is in Gaza. And we are focusing on the front lines where the needs are biggest.
Michelle?
Thank you. Michelle Nichols from Reuters. Thanks for the briefing. Just wanted to follow up on the attack, I guess, or the incident with the WFP vehicles in Gaza. Did WFP receive any kind of explanation from the Israelis on that? I know the deputy US ambassador here told the Security Council that Israel had said it was a miscommunication that led to that happening, but have you formally received anything from the Israelis? And how long were operations sort of at a standstill after that? I presume they're back up and running now, but how long were they stopped for? Thanks.
They were stopped for a few days until we had, the assurances from the Israeli authorities that, number one, they would give us an investigation report on the incident, and that there would be a review of the coordination mechanism, that review is ongoing.
And have you seen the investigation report yet?
We have not received it yet.
Yvonne?
Thank you very much for this briefing. Yvonne Moriarty, News. Can I ask about the state of donations currently? How does the level of donations compare with previous years? Are you struggling to maintain a level that's sufficient for your operations?
No, unfortunately, we're not. We are about of the level of donations that we were before COVID. So it went back to pre-COVID levels. But of course, the needs have increased. Food prices are increased. There has been much more displacement. There has been war. So we had to cut quite dramatically our operations. If we think of Syria, we used to reach 6 million people in Syria every month. Now we have the funds to just reach 1 million people. We also had to cut quite significantly our refugee operations for Syrian refugees by about 30%, both in terms of value and the number of people we reach, which has a profound impact not only on the food security of the refugees, but also on some anti-rhetoric, refugee rhetoric that you're aware of that's happening.
Sorry, to follow up on that. Why are the donors not paying?
Donors are providing assistance, but as I said, it has become more expensive to provide assistance, and they are returning back to pre-COVID levels because there have been supplemental support that has been approved by governments, which may not be available right now.
Edie?
So on this issue of donations, you've gone back to pre-COVID levels while needs have grown dramatically. What can be done to try to increase those donations to the level that's needed right now?
Well, we need to protect the donations with the donors that do fund us. WFP is an entirely voluntarily funded organization. We're still the largest humanitarian organization. So we need to protect the funding from our current donors. We need to expand. We need to find new donors. And this work is ongoing. We're also working very much with the private sector to see that we increase donations from the private sector. Private sector has been, we've had record contributions from the private sector during the first year of Ukraine. Private sector for us means companies, but also individuals. So there has been an outpour of support at the beginning of the war in Ukraine. So these are things that we're working very, very strongly on to maintain. But then on the other hand, we have to identify the most vulnerable amongst the vulnerable to make sure that we reach those at least, which are very, very hard choices to make. For our people on the ground, if you have to decide between, who gets and who doesn't get, is the most difficult choice to make.
Yvonne.
Sorry, still on this topic. There was an outpouring, you said, in the first year of the conflict in Ukraine. Was there a similar outpouring during this war in Gaza that you have noticed?
I couldn't say whether it's similar, but yes, of course, we also had individual contributions for people in Gaza and for our operation in Gaza.
Are there any further questions? Anything online? If not, I'd like to thank our guest, Corinne Fleischer, the Regional Director for the Middle East, North Africa, and Eastern Europe at WFP. Thanks very much for your briefing.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for your attention. Thank you.
Have a good afternoon, everyone.